Now, another nice capability that's available in the Visual Studio Designer relative to data binding is the ability to work with data templates directly from the designer. So I can go to something like my list box that's selected in the bottom left. I can right-click on it, and if I go to Edit Template here, this has to do with control templates, not data binding. But if I go to Edit Additional Templates, you can see Edit Generated Items Item Template. And basically what we're doing here is creating an item template for use with that control. I can say Create Empty, give it a name. We'll call this Product Templates. You can see there's some selections down below about where it's going to go. Those don't actually work correctly, and you have no way to change them. So you just say OK here. And what you end up with doesn't seem like a very impressive designer experience at first, because what you've got here is just this little box in the designer. A very important window in Visual Studio when working in this mode is the document outline view. You can see that the document outline view shows that we are working with a data template, and it's got a single grid within it. In fact, if we go look at the XAML, that's exactly what we're looking at, a data template named Product Template with a grid inside of it. But what we've got is a design time experience for working with that. So I can zoom in a little bit here. We'll go to 800%, and we can see we have the same kinds of design time experience working with that grid. So say I want to set this up similar to the product template we used in a previous module. I could click here to add a column to my grid. So now I have 2 columns in my grid. I could go to the toolbox and grab another grid and put it in the right cell. Can shrink it down so that it's fully within that cell, right click, say Reset Layout All, and now it will take off all sizing and positioning so that grid fills the right cell. Then on the edges of that grid in the designer, you can see I could split it up into 2 rows. Now I've got a place to put an image on the left, the name on the top, and the description on the bottom, similar to the product template that we used in a previous module. So now I just need to add those controls. Put the image in the leftmost cell, get it shrunk down so that it's fully within it, do another Reset Layout All. Then I can select the right grid so that I can see the guidelines on there, go to the toolbox, grab a text block, put it in the upper right. Now this one gets a little harder to resize because it's so darn big compared to that tiny little thing. But I can just shrink it down, get it fully within the cell, right click, Reset Layout All. And you can see things get a little wonky here because of the text being in there in a certain text size. But I could go edit that text and zero it out, and then things shrink back down to something reasonable. So then I could do something similar, do another text block into the bottom cell. Again, it's too large. Let's get rid of the text. Click out, click back in. And this is where this document window comes in really handy. Sometimes it's hard, especially with these semi-non-visual controls. Like, how do I grab the text block in here? You don't. You grab it in the document outline and it will select it down below. And then from there, I can say Reset Layout All. Grab it up here, say Reset Layout All. And you can see you have a little bit more control from the document outline. We can do things with our grid, such as changing sizing to auto sizing. Go to the sizing, auto size on that. Select the top level grid. Go to the sizing of the columns and auto size those. And now if we look at the resulting XAML, we have something fairly close to what we had done before manually by pasting in some code, where we've got the top level grid with 2 columns, the inner grid with 2 rows, an image in the left cell, the text blocks in the right cell, and no other sizing or positioning there. Now we need to hook up data binding on these controls to the appropriate properties of a product. Obviously I could drop right in the XAML here and bang out the code quick enough, but just to show you the designer way of doing it, I could go to my image in the document outline to make sure it's selected, go F4 to bring the properties window out, and go to the source property. I go to this little square to the right of its input field and say Create Data Binding. And we get back to our properties data binding window that I've covered before. We would say that we're going to use the data context, which is going to flow down into that data template as we've covered. And we would use a custom path up here to say that we're going to use the image property of whatever that data context object is. Then likewise, we could go to this text block, F4 for its properties, go to the text property, create data binding, set it to data context, path of name for this one, other text box, F4, create data binding, data context, and description for this one. So you can see that's a lot of mouse movement and a lot of clicking and pointing. And generally, I just found it would be a lot quicker to drop into the XAML and write those expressions myself. But I just want to get you exposed to the designer-based way of setting bindings as well. Now, if we go back to the design surface, you can see we're still in this sort of zoomed in focus where we're designing just the data template. How do we get out of this and back to the main designer view? Over here in the document outline, you see this up arrow, return to scope window in the upper left of the document outline. So we just click on that and we kind of zoom back out. And now you can see the document outline transforms to the top level window hierarchy and we get our normal designer back. What if we want to drop back in there and make more tweaks? We can just go select the control again, right click, edit additional templates, edit generated items, item template, and then edit current, and we'll go right back into that existing data template.